there's groups of onomatopoeia sounds. So you have water sounds. So here are water sounds. So pick some of these. So here's a list. So bloop, splash, spray, sprinkle, squirt. So those are your water sounds. So if you're having trouble thinking what to come up with, pick these words that I'm sending to you in the chat. Collision sounds. So sounds when two things bump into each other. So here are some collision sounds. You know, clap, clicker, air sounds. It's almost like with these categories, if you think about it, the way to design what you're doing is to start thinking about the visual imagery. You know, think in terms of the imagery that reflect the sounds. These sounds that I just sent are animal-based sounds, like a sound like the purr of a cat. So if you pick the sound purr, maybe you start to sketch out something that is like a cat in the text. So this is where the sketching part is important. So I want you to get used to sketching as just an exercise in what you're creating. So, you know, let's say I have purr as my sound, and I kind of have like a method for sketching. So what I generally do is maybe I start with like a light pencil. So you probably can barely see what I'm doing, but my word is purr. And when you sketch out, it can be sloppy, it can be messy. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. So here I'm kind of sketching out a cat, but then I think about the letters that I'm using. So so I have a P here, a U, an R, and it's going to take some time to really for you to formulate this. Another R, another R. This is purr. I have the tail of the cat, so I got a bunch of R's there. This is part of the creative process that I want you guys to investigate. Thinking about the text that makes up the word, but then to have something that represents it. So in this case, I have purr. Here I'm sketching with pencil here. So once I have that down, maybe I'll go over it in pen. I'll go over it in a darker pen. I just have like a bunch of things here. So whatever you have, you know, it can be like a, you know, regular, you know, ballpoint pen. But now I'm going to kind of go over this now. So this is the cat's head, let's say, is the P. And then here's my U. Here's my R. So I got kind of two legs here. Here's another R. And then my tail is, let's say, a bunch of R's. So this is why I want you to sketch it first. So this is my process. So I have a bunch of R's for the tail.
You can only use the pen tool, so you can draw every single letter by itself.
Yeah, well, I'm drawing, this is purr, you know, it's not perfect, but I have this now, I have purr. And then what you would do is take a picture of it with your phone. You know, most of you guys have phones, right? So you can take a photo. You could either take a picture with your phone or use the sketch as reference and then draw an Illustrator based on that reference. Here, what I can do is.
But we're not using the character or font in this case. We're only drawing it.
You can do it both ways. So you can either pick a font and use the distortion tools to move the font vectors to fit in with what you're doing. You can sketch it or you can draw it. so it's both ways work, you know. So it depends on what you feel comfortable with as you're learning these different tools in Illustrator. So what I could do too is maybe find like a nice font, like a sans serif font, and then put the characters where I want, and then use that puppet tool, that puppet distort tool, to move parts of that to get what I want. And with this now too, what I would do is take a picture. So I'll take a picture of this. So just, but you would take a picture of what you have here, and then in my circumstance, I would send the picture to myself, and then I would use the pen tool to draw on top of this. So you're using that. I think some of you used the technique already where your first layer is going to be your kind of like your guide layer, and you dim it, the opacity of that layer. So I'll send this to myself. What I can do, so this is the cool thing about Discord that I had you guys sign up for. So if you sign up for Discord, what you can do is send this, if you have, it works with my iPhone. So I have this drawing here and I want to send it to my computer, and then I can send it, it should let me send it to Discord. So I'm sending this to Discord and I'm sharing it with DMA10, and I'm going to send it. And it's going to go into this general category I have set up for Discord. So give it a couple seconds. But you know, you can email it to yourself. That's another way to do it too. So you have these different options here to send this to yourself. So it's going, it's going, it's going. And there it is. So here it is. And then I will, let's see, double click on that and just copy the image preview, because that's all I really need. Copy that. And then I'm going to go into Illustrator. And I'll create a new Illustrator file. And here I'll pick tabloid because I want it to be 11 by 17. Hit create. Paste that sketch. I'm going to hit E for transform to give me a rotate, the ability to rotate this. Hit shift and just kind of rotate it into place. And then it's set as my first layer. So I'm going to double click on that layer and turn it into a template. Hit OK. I'm going to dim it a little bit more than 50%. So I'll dim it 80%. Actually, let's see. Let me see. I'll go the other way. I'll make it 20%. I'll create a new layer on top, and then I like to make my layers nice and big. So I'm going to go into panel options, make this 120 pixels, hit OK. And then use my pen tool now to go and draw on top of this. So here I'm just going to use, because you know the pen tool now, so I can recreate these letters. So there's my P, and I'll have it set so the fill has nothing in it, but then I'll have some black outlines here. So there's my P, and then I want the inside of the P. So this time I'll use my, let's see. So I'm creating the, and then I'll go through and create all my letters like this. Now, one of the things about creating letters that have shapes inside of the letters, like the circle shape inside of the P, that's called your counter. It's called a counter. So you have this counter shape. If I want to have that work, I have to, what do I have to do? We talked about this earlier about when you have like a shape cutting out of something else. What is that called? So it's called a compound path. So I have to make this a compound path. So if I go into this P in my layers, I select that P down below, and I'll turn it into a fill now. So I'll fill it with black. And then I'll select the O on top, and then I'll go into Object, Compound Path, and Make. So now I have my P. And then I'll go through this whole process and do each letter. Maybe I want it white, actually. I'll do white like that. So I'll keep on doing this. I'll go and use my pen tool again, and this time I'll do the U. I'll use the curvature tool, actually. It just works. It's so much faster. And it's not perfect, but that's fine. And my P. I'll set the fill to none so we can kind of see all these letters. But I'll do this whole process now for the sketch. Does this help you guys with this project?
Yeah. But this
What?
in other words, we're not using like the font thing.
You could now. You could use a font. So you can do it both ways. So I'm not restricting you.
Mm-hmm.
If you use the font, though, you're going to have to convert the outlines. You know, rotate the font. Here, what I'll do with the R. So, for example, let's say I want to use a font. So for the R that makes up the tail, I'm going to use this select R. And I like that bungee font I've been using. So I'm going to go back and use bungee.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will convert it to outlines. So Control-Shift-O. And I'll hit S for scale. Make it bigger. Transform it. Okay, so maybe this is my tail. So what I'm going to do with this is use my distortion tools and push and pull so it follows my template. So I'm going to hit R for rotate, kind of rotate that into place. Hit E for transform. Scale it up. I will set the fill to none and to make the outline black. And then maybe in this circumstance, I will use this puppet warp tool. So I'll go into transform, or wait a second. Go into transform, select puppet warp, click, and then for my points, kind of pull this out. So every time I want to add some like roundness to it, I'm adding another point. And I think that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll just adjust some of these with my direct selection tool. You can also use simplify. So sometimes I like to go into path and select simplify. And you can reduce like the number of points. If you click on the three dots, you get some options here. And sometimes they like to use like smooth. It's not really doing much, actually. But once I have that set now, I have my R. And then maybe I can take that and repeat it. I have to make this a compound path. So the inside and the outside stay as one piece. So I'll go and select compound path. Oops, totally deleted. And then add the stroke again to that. And then with my direct selection tool, select, rotate it, E for scale. Here I'm using direct selection Alt and dragging. You can hit E for the transform tool and rotate it and scale. Select again, Alt. Hit V to select. Alt drag. E rotate. V to select. Alt drag. Alt drag again. E and rotate a little bit more. Maybe scale this one in a little bit. Right, so it's kind of getting to where I want it, you know, that cat. Have ears, so I can add the ears. You know, once it gets pretty close, I can get, you know, hide that sketch. But I think you guys understand what I'm trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here now, I want to play with the layering of the shapes. So if I go into, you know, I really want the P to be on top. So I can drag this layer, you know, and I can have it go to the top, or I can go to Object, Arrange, and use Bring to Front. So Shift Control square bracket. And then I just have to finish these two R's. So I'll go ahead and I'll use the regular pen tool just to finish these. And then I have to do the ears. And I think at this point, I don't even need that. I know what this is. Well, I need it. I need the template just for the R's. So I'll use my curvature tool. And then I have to make the R's compound path, so I'll do that. You can use the shortcut Control 8. So that's a compound path now. And the other, oops. Oh, this one part of the R is in the layer below. So let's see. I just have to go in here. So now it's part of the layer above. It doesn't like it for some reason. Now I can hide the original. I'm going to send, let's see, send this artist to the back. All right, that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of like close to what I want, right? So, so yeah, that's pretty much the assignment. But I want you to do 3. So I would take this one, put it over here, and then I'd have 2 more on the page. So I kind of went through the whole project from initial sketch to the final outcome here. You can play with maybe, if you want to give it color, that's fine. To actually maybe alternate between black and white to make it interesting. So, you know, just exploring variations of this. Does that work? Do you think, what do you think? Yes or no? Anybody out there? Caesar, what do you think? Charles? Is everybody like grabbing like a slice of pizza? Not even like in front of the computer at this point. Vivian, are you there?
Yeah, it's good. I like this.
So that's, I mean, that's the idea, right? It's kind of, it's pretty fun. Like,
It reminds me of Parappa the Rapper's font.
Of what?
Parappa the Rapper is a video game character.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is the kind of font.
Yeah, that's style.
And Miami, they use that same kind of font like this.
Yeah, totally. But you can explore variations of this. It doesn't, like, I'm doing like, my style is like this bubbly kind of like cartoony style, but yours doesn't have to be. Like, you know, I could have sketched out the cat differently, maybe using hard angles, let's say. You know, maybe it's fluffier somehow. I don't know, like, you know, whatever your sketch is, but you want to explore the sketch. But that's why I want to see your sketches. So maybe I can give you some direction of things you can do with those sketches. And I don't want you to, like, you know, don't worry about having perfect drawing. So it's not about having a good drawing. It's more about having ideas, and the ideas can be really rough, you know. So the sketch, it's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be the opposite of perfect. You make it perfect when you bring it into Illustrator, and then you start to refine the sketch. And that's when you start to have that level of perfection.
Joe?
Yeah.
How to remove the background of the picture that you have?
Oh, I just turned off the visibility. So I just click the eyeball next to the layer. I mean, once you're done with it too, you can just hit, just select it and hit delete. So I don't need that anymore.
Oh, okay. Just from the layer, just delete that. Okay.
Yeah. Just delete it. Yeah, once you're done with it, you don't need it. Okay. The only thing that I would think about though as you're doing it, once you create one, lock it down, then create a new layer and create your next one in a new layer. Don't create the 3 separate ones all in the same layer, because what you want to do when you're done maybe is select one of these and arrange it. And if everything's bundled in one layer, it gets hard to select the separate things you're creating. So keep them separate, and then you click on that circle, and then you can kind of move it around and reposition it.
Okay.
I think
so all 3 of them, they're like here, one after the other on the same.
Yeah, keep them on the same page. And the idea is once you create them, you have the word that signifies the sound, and we'll have to see, do we understand that that's a cat? You know, can you read it? You know, it's actually kind of hard to read. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Like, how would you refine it? What could you do? Vivian?
I don't know, maybe do something different with the R's and the P.
Yeah, maybe the R's actually have little cat feet. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the P has like a tongue. You know, like there's milk or something there. Um, or maybe they're too round too. I mean, maybe they're too. The roundness of it makes you lose the letter. So maybe it has to be a little bit more refined. Like maybe I could go in here and start to take away points. So hit the minus key and do that. Or use your direct selection tool. You click on this and actually, no, instead of direct selection tool, use
What you could do, two things you could do with it is instead of it making a hook, make it kind of like an S shape so it can kind of go with the sound effect, the vocal, like, to give you that control. You know how like French use that symbol above to make like a kind of an S shape?
Oh, okay,
You
yeah,
can, you can also possibly make this a nose and add whiskers to it to give it a more defining look as a cat.
Right. If you want to add that element to it, yeah, that's totally fine, right? You know, so
What?
the way to go about it, I think too, is when you these words that I put into your chat, you know, I think the instinct is if you have an animal sound, then you draw out the animal in your sketch, and the words kind of become the animal. It doesn't have to be like that. The air sounds like swooshes and flutters. You may have additional lines like strokes coming out from things, and it had a twirly type look to it. And maybe the words are separate and they're more, you know, maybe for like a swoosh, you know, a swoosh is swoosh. What type of typeface works with swoosh? Does a sans serif typeface work with swoosh? Yes or no? What's the weight of it? Does it feel light and fluffy? You know, like kind of, does it feel light and fluffy, or does it feel heavy?
Heavy.
Right? So it's like swoosh. What type of typeface would be good for swoosh? If I look at my fonts here,
Possibly something that puts a heavy emphasis on the center, like the O's, or maybe a signature.
yeah, like that. Does that feel better? Right?
Yeah, because it gives a light breathing movement.
Yeah.
A
So
light breathing movement with it to kind of feel like the text is actually doing the swoosh.
yeah. So that feels like swoosh versus that. So it's like the letter forms themselves. So kind of what I was saying in like last week is that when you look at the font as a whole, that whole font conveys a feeling the way it was designed. So, you know, a script-based font is much better for something that's airy and light versus this heavy font here. So, I mean, it's just that feeling, right? It's the feeling that you want to convey. So think about the font and what you're doing with the font. So once I get into this too, one thing about script-based fonts, all caps is kind of like not recommended. So how the characters connect is important. But, you know, for something like swoosh, when I convert it to outlines, it's almost like I want to see the emphasis of the word in terms of the shape. So sometimes with swoosh, it's like the end of the word, that SH has more emphasis. So maybe I use, go to object, and I use one of these warp envelope distorts. And maybe I use something, I think the fish one actually works. It's just I got to think about which direction. Like almost like that feels a little bit swooshy. and then maybe it needs some additional like so here I'm just adding some additional lines here. So, yeah, that feels more like a swoosh. Kind of like the airflow of the swoosh itself, those airflow lines. So let's say, you know, this is my assignment, and then I have per, and then I have swoosh, but I would make sure that this swoosh is in its own layer, separate from per. And then I do one more. So those are my two so far. Then I do a third one.
Yeah, I like the airy, the symbols.
But it's just kind of an exploration of the sound and just thinking about all the tools that you have learned up to this point to convey that, right? And I think you almost have like, in terms of like creating shapes and using the pen tools and the distortion tools, that's like a good deal of Illustrator that we have covered so far. So you should have enough there to come up with something. So you guys have any questions about this? What we're doing? Does anybody need any help with anything?
So basically we can add to more than just the word, like the text.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
like here I'm adding little ears. You know, you still want to make sure the text is readable. That's key to this. So part of the impact of creating something like this, because in a way you're almost creating like a logo, like a very like specialized type logo. The impact is when the type starts to turn into the image itself. So you're kind of, you know, you're kind of confusing the brain in such a way where the word becomes the image, you know, and then you don't even need to read it, but you can perceive it based on the form that it's taking. It has just like this kind of like magical quality to it. You know, if you had the word swoosh in, you know, Helvetica, it's just not going to feel right, you know, but once you start to add things to it, it almost becomes animated. It gives it like a life beyond the word itself that, you know, the original word, if it was just set in like regular Helvetica or like a, you know, like Times Roman or something. So yeah, you can add to it. Anybody else? Any other questions? Mary, do you have any questions?
Is it
Daniel?
necessary that we have
What?
I'm good.
Everybody understands this now, and you have enough tools at your disposal, right? Does anybody think this is challenging? Too challenging?
should we use from the list or it doesn't matter?
I would use from the list. So, I mean, if you understand what onomatopoeia is, you could maybe use some words that go beyond the list, but these words really represent what onomatopoeia is. So the sound is similar to the way it's spelled. Something that makes a whooshing sound, well, the way that whoosh is spelled is kind of based off of the way it sounds, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, so use these words to help you out so you have an understanding. Because what you're doing too is you're trying to bring some like animated qualities to the actual word. So
I was overthinking.
yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit. The way to think about it too is, let's say this was a motion graphics project. You know, if this was a motion graphics class, what I would do is have you animate the word so it starts to actually convey those same feelings as well, but through like animation. But it's not, so we're just working on, you know, the still image here.